Chibueze's heart pounded. I know what you did. Nnamdi's Hambi's hand froze on the machete. Then he chuckled. Do you? Chibueze stepped closer. You killed my father. Nnamdi sighed and set the machete down. I had hoped you would not find out. Chibueze's blood ran cold. He wasn't even denying it. Nnamdi stood up slowly. You don't understand, Chibueze. Your father was meddling in things far greater than him. Chibueze's jaw tightened. And what about Adaku? Was she part of it too? Nnamdi nodded. She overheard something she shouldn't have. I had to silence her. Chibueze clenched his fists. You're a monster. Nnamdi smirked. And you, my dear nephew, are a fool. Do you really think you can stop the Brotherhood? Chibueze's breath hitched. I will expose you. Nnamdi stepped closer, lowering his voice. If you continue, you will not live to see the next funeral. Chibueze held his ground, but his heart pounded violently. His uncle turned and walked back into his hut. Chibueze had a choice, run or fight, and deep down, he knew. The next funeral in Akum could be his. Chibueze stood frozen in front of his uncle's hut, his fists clenched so tightly his nails dug into his palms. Nnamdi had admitted to killing his father. And Mdaku. No shame, no guilt, just cold, calculated evil. Chibueze's breathing was ragged. His mind screamed at him to run, but his heart burned with rage. He wanted revenge. He turned around and walked away, but in his heart, he made a silent promise. I will make you pay. But as he left, he had the strange sensation of being watched. Somewhere in the darkness, the Brotherhood was waiting, and they would not let him go easily. Chibueze found Ezinne waiting outside his hut. She sat cross-legged on the ground, playing with a small knife, her dark eyes glinting in the moonlight. You're still alive, she mused. Chibueze exhaled sharply. My uncle confessed. Ezinne tilted her head. And yet you live. Interesting. Chibueze frowned. You think I'm a coward? Ezinne shrugged. I think you're a fool if you believe this ends with Nnamdi. He is only one piece of a much larger puzzle. Chibueze crossed his arms. Then tell me everything. Ezinne smirked. You think you're ready for the truth? The truth will shatter you, Chibueze. Chibueze stepped closer. Then let it. Ezinne studied him for a long moment, then finally nodded. Meet me at the old shrine at midnight, but be warned, if you come, there is no turning back. Chibueze didn't hesitate. I'll be there. Midnight. Chibueze crept through the darkened village, heart pounding. The old shrine lay deep in the forest, a place whispered about in fear, a place of forbidden knowledge. As he approached, he saw Ezinne standing in front of a stone altar, an old oil lamp casting eerie shadows around her. You're late, she said. Chibueze ignored her and stepped closer. What is this place? Ezinne traced her fingers over the carvings on the stone. This is where the first members of the Brotherhood made their blood oath. Chibueze frowned. A blood oath? Ezinne turned to him. Yes, a pact that binds them forever. A pact your uncle made. Chibueze's stomach twisted. What does that mean? Ezinne exhaled. It means that the Brotherhood doesn't just kill to stay in power. They kill to feed something. A cold shiver ran down Chibueze's spine. Feed something? Ezinne's voice was barely a whisper. The spirits of the dead demand blood, and the Brotherhood, they give it willingly. Chibueze felt like he had been punched in the chest. You're saying the Brotherhood sacrifices people? Ezinne nodded. Every year, and those who ask too many questions. Chibueze swallowed hard. Are silenced. Ezinne nodded again. Like your father, like Adaku. Chibueze clenched his fists. His father hadn't just been murdered, he had been offered. "I have to stop them," he said, his voice shaking with rage. Ezinne gave him a knowing look. "Then you must be willing to go further than they expect. You must be willing to do what they fear." Chibueze's heart pounded. "What do they fear?" Ezinne stepped closer, her voice barely audible. "They fear the dead. They fear justice." And just like that, Chibueze understood. He needed to make the dead speak. The next night, Chibueze and Ezinne made their way to the forbidden burial grounds. It was where the Brotherhood buried their victims in unmarked graves. As they approached, the air turned thick, heavy with something unseen. "They don't want us here," Ezinne murmured. Chibueze swallowed his fear. "I need proof." They began digging. The soil was loose, as if something had recently been buried. Then suddenly, their hands hit something solid. Chibueze's breath hitched as he unearthed a skull. But not just any skull. A fresh skull. Someone had been killed recently. And that meant the Brotherhood was still active. Chibueze and Ezinne covered the grave quickly and ran back to the village. They needed to find out who was next. Ezinne led him to a hidden spot near the chief's compound. "Every month, the Brotherhood meets here," she whispered. Chibueze's heart raced. "We can listen in." They crouched low, watching as 5 men entered a hut. Among them was his uncle, Namdi. Ezinne grabbed Chibueze's arm. "Listen carefully." Through a small crack in the wall, they heard the village chief's voice. The next sacrifice must happen before the new moon. Chibueze's blood ran cold. Someone was next, and he had a feeling he knew who. Chibueze's chest felt tight. "Who is the next sacrifice?" he whispered. Ezinne peered through the gap, listening intently. Then she turned to him, eyes dark with realization. "You." Chibueze felt the world tilt. "What?" Ezinne's grip on his arm tightened. "They're going to kill you." His breath came in shallow gasps. The Brotherhood had marked him. And now there was no turning back. Chibueze and Ezinne moved quickly, knowing they had only a few days before the Brotherhood came for him. They needed a plan. "We have to expose them," Chibueze said. Ezinne nodded. "But we can't do it alone." They needed proof, witnesses, and most importantly, they needed to survive. Chibueze went back home to see his mother. "Mama, tell me the truth. Did you know?" Tears filled her eyes. She nodded. "I was afraid. I wanted to protect you." Chibueze felt his heart break. His own mother had known all along. "I will not run, Mama." Mama Nwosu sobbed. "Then you will die, my son." But Chibueze knew he would rather die fighting than live in fear. The Brotherhood made their first move that night. Oji, a group of men stormed Chibueze's hut, but when they entered, it was empty. Chibueze was already gone, and now the hunter had become the hunted. Chibueze crouched low in the shadows, watching from a distance as the men stormed into his hut. Their leader, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, growled in frustration when he saw the empty space. "Where is he?" A second man checked behind the small wooden table. "He must have known we were coming." Chibueze held his breath. They wouldn't leave until they found him. Beside him, hidden in the darkness, Ezinne whispered, "They will search the entire village. We need to move." Chibueze nodded. "I know a place where they won't look." He led Ezinne through the narrow footpaths behind the village, moving swiftly like a shadow. The only sound was the rustling of leaves beneath their feet. When they reached an abandoned hunting hut deep in the forest, Chibueze exhaled. For now, they were safe, but he knew one thing for certain. The Brotherhood would not stop hunting him. Inside the Brotherhood's secret meeting place, Namdi sat at the head of the wooden table, his fingers tapping against the surface. The men who had stormed Chibueze's hut stood before him, their faces grim. "We searched everywhere. He has vanished." Namdi's jaw tightened. "Then we make him come to us." The men exchanged glances. "How?" Namdi's lips curled into a sinister smile. His mother. The room fell silent. They would use Mama Nwosu to lure Chibueze out, and when he came for her, they would kill him. Chibueze sat in the hunting hut, staring into the dim fire. Ezinne's voice broke the silence. "They won't stop Chibueze." He nodded. "I know." Just then, a soft knock came at the wooden door. Both of them sprang to their feet. Chibueze grabbed his hunting knife. "Who's there?" a weak voice answered. "It's Mama and Kichi." Chibueze opened the door. The old woman looked pale, her breathing labored. She held out a small folded note. Chibueze took it with shaky fingers. His stomach twisted when he read the words. "We have your mother. Come alone." Ezinne snatched the note from Chibueze's hands and read it. Her expression darkened. "This is a trap." Chibueze's heart pounded. "I have to go." Ezinne grabbed his arm. "You'll die." His jaw tightened. "I can't abandon my mother." Ezinne exhaled sharply. "Then we need a plan." Chibueze stared into the fire, his mind racing. He knew what he had to do, and this time, he would not be the hunted. He would be the hunter. The next night, Chibueze walked through the village, heading toward the Brotherhood's meeting place. Alone? Ezinne had wanted to come with him, but he refused. "If things go wrong, I need you to stay hidden." As he reached the compound, two men stepped out of the shadows, their spears glinting in the moonlight. One of them smirked. "You're either very brave or very stupid." Chibueze clenched his fists. "Take me to my mother." The men exchanged amused looks before leading him inside. Chibueze had stepped into the lion's den. Now he just had to find a way to survive. Inside the dimly lit hut, Chibueze saw his mother sitting on the ground, her hands bound, her eyes wide. Her eyes widened in shock when she saw him. "My son! No! What have you done?" Before Chibueze could respond, a familiar voice spoke behind him. "He came, just like I knew he would." Chibueze turned slowly. Namdi stood in the doorway, a dagger in his hand, smiling like a man who had already won. The trap had been set, and Chibueze had walked right into it. Chibueze's mind raced. There were at least 5 men in the room, all armed. Namdi took a slow step forward. "It didn't have to be this way, nephew." Chibueze lunged. He swung his knife, slicing across the first man's arm. The second came at him, but Chibueze dodged and slammed his elbow into the man's throat. Chaos erupted. Mama Nwosu screamed. A sharp pain exploded in Chibueze's side as someone's fist struck his ribs. He staggered but kept fighting. Then a loud whistle sounded outside, and suddenly the room erupted in fire. The flames cast eerie shadows against the walls as the Brotherhood members panicked. Ezinne stood outside holding a torch. Her eyes burned with fury. "You think you can take what you want and never face the consequences?" Namdi cursed. "Kill them both!" But Ezinne's laughter rang through the night. "You should be afraid, Namdi." She turned to Chibueze. "Get your mother and run. I'll handle this." Chibueze's hair hesitated. "Ezinne," but she was already stepping forward, unafraid. Namdi realized too late what was happening. Ezinne wasn't just here to save Chibueze. She was here to end the Brotherhood. Chibueze grabbed his mother's arm and pulled her out of the burning hut. Behind them, screams filled the air. Ezinne moved like a shadow, her knife flashing as she cut down anyone who tried to escape. Nnamdi turned to flee, but Ezinne blocked his path. "You killed Elder Nwosu." Nnamdi raised his dagger, his eyes wild. "He was weak, just like you." Ezinne's smile didn't waver. "Then let's see who is weaker." Their blades clashed. The fight was brutal, but Ezinne was faster, deadlier. With one final stroke, she drove her knife into Nnamdi's chest. His eyes widened. He gasped, then he fell. The monster was dead. The flames consumed the Brotherhood's hideout, burning away years of secrets and blood. The surviving members of the village watched in stunned silence. Ezinne stood beside Chibueze, watching the fire. Then, softly at first, she laughed. Not a laugh of joy. Not a laugh of madness, but a laugh of justice. Chibueze finally understood. Ezinne had never laughed to mock the dead. She had laughed because she knew the dead always get their revenge. Thank you so much for watching. If you got to this point, please give this video a thumbs up. It will help grow my small YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed yet to my YouTube channel, please do well to subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you get notified when I post more interesting content like this. Do well to go to my channel if you haven't done so. I have more interesting videos and interesting topics and stories on my channel. Leave a comment in this video, under this video, and let me know your thoughts about this video. See you guys in my next video. Bye.